Hey guys, Eric from Satisfied Incorporated. Today I wanted to just walk through some tech. So I've been working on this E12 and I actually worked on it all week. I'm beat down. The reason is because I got this thing running before I even started working on it. And I've done a ton of work to it since I got it running. I've replaced the whole entire interior, replaced the dash, took out the reactors, messed with all the wiring with the reactors, just replaced the fuel pump. I've done a ton of work to this car. So I tried to be really careful with what was happening to it. So if I went back and it didn't run, I would be able to address like what I did. So I went back to get it running again and I couldn't get it to run. I quickly found out it was spark. So I haven't really worked on a ton of points ignition cars. This is a 78, so it's a little bit older. Most of these BMWs would be going to a computer controlled emissions, or sorry, ignition in the early 80s. So I haven't messed with anything in the late or even mid 70s. So that's what this car is. This car has got the points ignition. And I just wanted to walk you through it because I literally spent a whole week trying to figure out why I didn't have spark. And anybody who's been in a situation where you're just going around and around and around in circles and you can't figure it out and it doesn't make sense, it really messes with your head. So what I had to do is I had to go to the basics and I had to learn what the points ignition is and how it works. And it's really actually not that hard. So once I did that, I was able to go, okay, this, check these points. And then I was able to move on. And I'll just show you real quickly of what's going on with these cars. All right, so if you take a look, basically in this points system, this points ignition, you're gonna have your coil, and then you're gonna have your distributor, which is gonna include, your cap, your rotor, your points ignition, of course, the wires and spark plugs and such. So the thing about this is this is a terribly simple setup, and I kind of went into that knowing that, but it still messed with me really hard. So let me just go through real quick, and I hope this will help somebody, because there's information all over the internet of like what you can do, what you can try, but nothing's put together in the same place. And sometimes that's what I need, at least. So I'm just going to kind of go through and we'll talk about everything all put together, what it does. And like I say, really, you're only looking at a couple pieces. And if you have those couple pieces right, you should have spark. So to start off first, you're going to have your battery. So obviously you have your battery. You want your 12-volt battery on these cars. Battery is going to run a wire to your switch, and then your switch is going to come through. Let me show you, because this is actually somewhat helpful. So if you look at this connection, that goes into the engine bay, right? There's this black wire up here in the corner. And then, sorry, I'll see if I can get a good shot on that. So here's a green wire. So green and black, that's pretty much what we're looking for. So just remember this. So this is the green and the black. You got to pay attention to those. And then if you come over on your starter, on top of your starter, you've got this guy here. It's just a little spade connector. So I'll explain where all those go. So if you look at your coil, you're going to have your coil here, and I've got these separated because I was troubleshooting these. But this one here, it's actually off of your coil's number 15. See if I can get a shot. So 15 is this is going to be your input, and then this one's not. So you have 15, you have this wire here, which is the wire. That's the problem, is like your wires get kind of messed up. This is actually like brown, but I don't know if it's spray painted or what the problem is. This is actually brown. So this wire comes in off your starter, that starter connection I was telling you about. This one comes in off your green connection on the engine connectors. So the thing is this one is going to have a resistor. So this should be measuring about 8 volts coming into your coil. But it'll be tied to this one. And the reason you have 2 is because this one's the one that comes off the starter. So when you turn that key and it cranks, it actually sends 12 volts to this. And the reason it wants to do that is it wants to give your coil the appropriate amount of voltage. If some of this might be wrong, but this is my understanding of it. So if you have just this one coming off the fuse box, when you crank your car, it might take too much voltage away from this, and then it'll cause your coil not to run. So it adds 12 volts along with this 8 volts to try to make sure that this coil gets the appropriate amount of voltage when you're cranking. After you're cranking, you're not going to get this 12 volts anymore. You'll just have 8 volts. Okay, so hopefully this is like really simple so far. So 8 volts, 12 volts from the fuse box, from the starter. Okay, so, and then you have a coil, and then you have this other post here. So basically it's input, and then you have actually these 2 outputs. Sorry, I can't think. The plug wire, the coil wire, that's going to be going to the distributor cap. So this is one output, and then this is another output. So that's the only thing that might be confusing about this. And you're like, well, why would I have 2 outputs, right? Okay, so we'll address this one. This is the first, what we'll call output. So that one goes on there, and then you have, see if I can grab it. So you have a connector, should have something that looks like this. Sorry, I'm mixing in another. I don't know where that wire came from. It's like the AC or something. But basically you have this wire, right? One coming in, one going out. So this wire needs to plug in. If I can get this. Sorry, it's super dark in there. But it plugs into the side of your distributor. I got a spare distributor. So I've got everything taken apart, sorry. So this is actually your points ignition. And then this thing will sit in here like this. And so this is your spade connector coming out of your distributor, right? So that's where this thing goes, okay? So, and here's the part that kind of messed with me. So you have your wire going from here, and it goes over here. This plugs into your distributor. And then this wire that continues on, that's the other black wire coming out. Well, it's actually going into that fuse box. So you have a black wire going into the fuse box. You have your green, that's here. Then you have your starter. 3 wires, right? So you got to pay attention to. So now that black wire will go to your distributor, but then it also goes to your fuse box, and then it splits off 2 different ways. Well, 3 different ways on this car. It'll go into the engine diagnostic port, which is nothing, right? You're not, because you don't plug anything into that anymore. So it dead ends there. And then another black one, you can kind of see my reactor wiring. Another one goes into the reactor wiring. I'm cutting all that stuff out, so you don't have to worry about that. So basically, the black wire that goes from the distributor to the fuse box will travel in to your tachometer, okay? And that's important, so remember that. So 8 volts from the fuse box, 12 volts from the starter, and then this is going to go to the distributor and also the tachometer. Okay, so I said these are 2 different outputs. So why is there 2 different outputs? Well, the outputs don't work at the same time as each other. So if you look, this little thing right here is bouncing off that hex, and it tries to make it so that opens, okay? So now if you go back here, remember this is basically hooked up to this. So when this opens, there is no longer a path for voltage to go through. It's just in the air. So now it wants to go through here. Because basically what you have is you have this. This is connected through wires that circle around here, and it goes out here. And so When you go through here, say this is our 8 volts, it should be coming out here at 8 volts also. But when it comes through here, since it's an inductor, it's going to circle around here and it's going to come out here at, I'm just going to name some numbers, I don't know, 1,000 volts. Okay, so this is now open because this is open and now it's closed, so voltage will go through there. But let's just say it's open. So when it's open, voltage is going to go through here, and it's going to go through your distributor cap, and it's going to go through your rotor, and then it's going to go through your spark plug wires, and then it's going to go through your spark plugs, because that is the new best way for the electricity to go to ground. The ground, or the electricity, always wants to go to ground. It's always trying to find how to get there, right? So voltage in here, and then it's either going to come out here or here, depending on whether this is open or closed. Closed, the voltage goes through here. Open, the voltage goes through your distributor cap, your rotor wires, etc. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. This condenser is important. It stores voltage in here when this is open. And I'm not sure I understood that correctly, but it basically stores the voltage. It's like a capacitor. It's like a little battery. So it stores the voltage while this is open, so it can still create a path, I believe. It's not really important, actually. Just make sure that this is ground, because this is important. And then let me show you also. So you got to set your, it's called dwell. So you don't want it to just be open like a small amount of time, or you don't want it to be open most of the time. You want it to be open an exact amount of time. And BMW tells you how much you want that to be open. Let me show you that. A set of feeler gauges. So BMW will tell you what feeler gauge to put in there. And I believe I could go look in the manual, but I believe it said between 13 and 15 is where you want this to be open. So basically you just stick your feeler gauge in there, and then you mess with this screw. This is your adjustment screw right here. And so you make it so this thing just slides in there really nice and neat. And then it's just barely open when it's supposed to be. So at you know, so if you're on this, sorry, I'm trying to get the light on there. If you're on this point of the hex, you want to be directly lined up on that point of the hex, like exactly lined up on that hex. And if you're not, turn your motor. Well, it's going to go the wrong way, but you can turn your motor till you're on there exactly. And that's when you want your feeler gauge. This is like a 14 thousandths, 13 thousandths, 15 thousandths, something like that. That's when you want that in there, and that's when you want to set that perfectly. And that'll set it so you get, like, you don't want sparks going around here all the time, right? You need a break. You need it to go cylinder 1, cylinder 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You want all your cylinders to fire, but there needs to be a break in between when it tells it to fire. And that's what that thing's doing. Okay, so, and that's pretty much it. So if you look at it again, so you have an input, which is either 12 volts or 8 volts, depending on if you're cranking your battery. Out here should be 8 volts, as long as this thing is not closed. If it's closed, then you're not going to get any voltage, because your voltage wants to come out of here. So your voltage going there. So, and then, well, so here's, let me just tell you where I got messed up, and I don't even know why. So I couldn't get this thing to start for like a week. I was going crazy, and I made this jumper wire. So basically I hooked it up to this post, and then I hooked it up to the distributor, and I figured we just got to have our 8 volts in, we got to have an out, got to have all that stuff set correctly, and then your caps and wires and stuff. And I don't know why, but I could not get sparks still. So I figured the only last thing that I could look into was the wire that's going, oh, my camera's not following me. My wire that's going into my tachometer. I don't know why it happened, but when I disconnected my tachometer wire, the car got spark. So I thought initially that you had to have that wire go to your tachometer. But since I've gotten the car running, I've used that jumper wire that just goes here to there, and I can get the car to spark and run. So I don't know what was up with that, but I tried that setup, just a jumper from here to there. All this was legit, that was legit. I tried that for probably like a day and a half, and I couldn't get that to work. I don't know why, but if you're having problems like that, check your tachometer. And ironically, that was my whole problem the whole time, is when I replaced my dash, that tachometer wire, I switched the ground for the signal wire. So the wire coming from here to the tachometer was actually at ground. So if you remember the theory, basically it was saying, well, what's the best way to ground? From here in the distributor cap, or from the coil wire to the distributor? Like, the easiest way was from here to my tachometer. So that's the direction the voltage was working. So who knew? But anyway, the car's running, and I hope that helps. I feel like it's kind of a quick, dirty, like, it's complicated, but it's not. You know, you just got to have your two voltages, your output, and you know that points is going to be really important too, and have that condenser ground. Oh, and another thing I found in here, I don't know if you can see it, but this wire, there's a wire that jumpers from the body down into this plate. So your timing advance moves this plate, and so I don't think this plate's grounded all the time, so it needs this little ground wire. Mine was broken off, so I soldered that back on. It didn't help initially. I don't know if it does now, but whatever. Anyway, I know that was kind of a quick and dirty and pretty sloppy presentation of it, but I hope that helps somebody, because like I say, I just spent a week on it, and anybody who's spent a week on a single problem on getting a car running, it'll drive you nuts. So if you have a points ignition BMW, it's super simple. Just take care of those. So what? 1, 2. Well, you don't even really need the wire from the starter. So it's really like 2 wires and your points. And I mean, it's not. Hopefully, it's not a big deal. It just took me a week. So how big a deal was it? I don't know. So anyway, that helps. Hopefully that helps. You know, if you guys have anything to add to it, it's nice to have a lot of information in one place. So if you have something to add to how the points work, how the ignition works, that could help somebody out, go ahead and comment and leave a message. You know, of course, making these videos to try to help you guys, but I've got a store also trying to stay in business, satisfiedincorporated.com. So check it out. And if you need wheels, BMW parts, a lot of stuff going on, just give it a gander and see if anything looks good to you. Thanks for your support.